All right, so today I want to talk about a subject that's a little bit different, and that's going to be talent versus hard work. So, a couple of days ago, I saw a tweet that said the biggest success factor for competitive Smash is talent, and the best way to improve is simply having talent. If you don't have it, you're limited, so don't set your goals high, you're not likely to reach them. And there are some caveats that came with this tweet, including it doesn't mean that hard work won't get you anywhere, but you're just going to reach your limits eventually. And also, they're not telling anyone to quit or anything like that if they don't have talent. But at the same time, you shouldn't frustrate yourself trying to reach goals that just might not be possible. So I disagree with all of that. And the reason why is because I think people see academic learning and learning a video game, specifically a competitive video game, to be so vastly different when I believe that they're actually pretty similar, but just in different degrees. So, with academic learning, everyone can learn math. We all know that. Despite the fact that it may be way more difficult for some people, the way that some people who are talented, the way that geniuses may think of math, are completely different. And so someone may be able to learn calculus without having learned anything before that, whereas for most people you have to stack on those skills in order to figure out, oh, okay, well, this pattern goes here, this is why this makes sense, etc., etc., etc. But ultimately you can learn that sort of thing. With a video game, on the other hand, like let's take an action game. Ultimately, we also realize that everyone can do that as well. Everyone can beat an action game. Everyone can beat an action game with a certain level of speed, or everyone can beat it on whatever they're trying to accomplish in it. And the reason why is because you do have certain patterns, and even if you may have some people who are really talented just be able to just mow through the entire game, for most people, you're going to have to struggle a bit, you're going to figure it out, but ultimately, the more you play it, the more you'll get better at it, and the faster you'll get better at it. Now, the issue for a competitive game, on the other hand, is people see that as way different because now you're trying to learn the patterns of another person. Most of the other information for competitive games, specifically fighting games, isn't actually that difficult. Frame data is something that everyone can learn and why it's important, and a lot of tactics are also something that everyone can learn. You just stack on those skills until you're ultimately good enough. But the issue is that because now you have another person in the mix, you have some people who say, oh, well, only the talented people can do this, or something like that. And it's times like these when I'm really, really, really thankful that Daigo exists. I still haven't finished his book, but one thing that I remember in particular is that when he used to go to the arcades as a kid, he was flat out bad. He really was not good at it. And nowadays, we know him as one of the greatest Street Fighter players to ever exist, if not the greatest Street Fighter player to exist. In fact, I don't think he's lost any first 10 matches or anything like that. He adapts, he figures it out. So even if he's not doing as well in tournament right now, it's like ultimately when he has the time to adapt and download, he's pretty much unstoppable. And he did all of that through hard work. For Smash, you have geniuses. And you have people who have gotten where they are through hard work. An example of a genius is Tweak, for example. He basically can learn a character in a day or something ridiculous like that. And he's just really, 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 really good. He picks up concepts really quickly. And ultimately, he's able to do great things because he is a genius. But the issue here is he also works really, really, really hard. In fact, he works harder than most any other player in the game. Zero also used to work harder than anyone back when he was playing. And the thing is, when people look at people like Zero or Tweak, they look only at the fact that they have talent. They're like, oh, I can't accomplish that. Whereas the real thing they should be paying attention to is, oh, these people are working really, really, really hard. And on top of that, they're working efficiently hard. So, for example, when Zero was playing, he would fly out players in order to study matchups and stuff like that. And yeah, not everyone can do that, But you have to realize that that is also under hard work, because not everyone can do a lot of things. So a lot of the time what I see is the people who claim that they don't have time or something like that are the people who most want to say that talent is the biggest issue. So you see a college kid or something like that who has to take off a month in order to study for finals or something like that. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to take a break from Smash or something like that. And it's like, while that is admirable, because yes, you should be working on your studies, you should be paying attention to your studies. At the same time, you can't be surprised afterwards when you're not as good as you were, when you have to get back up to the level that you were. Or really, if you're just like, oh, hey, well, I didn't practice for this month, but why aren't I here? It's clearly because I don't have talent. Yeah, there are some talented people who can just take off for a month or whatever and still be way, way better than you. But at the same time, if you want to reach that level, hard work is still sufficient. And as a matter of fact, hard work is necessary in order to get to that level. So when you see the top players and something like that, and it's like, yes, they can practice for 8 hours a day. Yes, they can practice to a certain level of efficiency, and you're just not putting in the same amount of time. Then of course you can't be surprised, because you're not putting in the same amount of time as a top player to be a top player. More than that, it's also a situation where, let's say that you only have a couple hours a day or something like that to practice. If that's the case, you should also be practicing more efficiently. Yet what I notice is a lot of people who are doing friendlies or something like that, they get frustrated because they're trying to win a friendlies match as opposed to trying to learn something. And you shouldn't be trying to use the time that you have to practice in order to... You shouldn't be using that to win, basically. And that's one thing that I learned a while back from fencing. You should always be trying to actually practice something specific. So whether you're doing casuals or friendlies or whatever, you should always be trying to learn something. So one thing I'd read a while back was Japanese players. They'll go and when they're playing friendlies, they'll practice something specific, like ledge trapping, or trying to keep your opponent in disadvantage, or trying to escape a disadvantage, or trying to do something specific, basically. And what I see is a lot of people who either put in a lot of time and fail, or people who just don't put in time at all and then assume that talent is the biggest issue, when it's like, no, you're not practicing in the way that you should. Zero even mentioned this a couple days ago on his stream, where he was saying that you don't necessarily need to practice for a long time, but you need to practice efficiently. And the thing that sets, say, Zero, Tweak, and a lot of top players apart is basically not only do they know how to practice efficiently, but they also practice for a ridiculous amount of time. And yet I see still, even up to high-level players, mid-level players, so on and so forth, I see all of these people just assuming that, yeah, I should be winning, despite the fact I'm not putting in the work, despite the fact that I'm trying to win in a match where I should be practicing. And it's like, of course you're not going to get anything from that. That doesn't make any sense, right? So, my ultimate opinion here is that I think anyone can learn, but the issue is that everyone who talks about talent being such a big factor are usually the people who aren't actually putting in enough hard work. I always see someone talking about, oh, I worked so hard doing this, I worked so hard doing that, and they're not fixing the most basic things about their play. So it's like, oh, hey, I worked hard, or, oh, I did this for years and stuff like that, and it's like, I'm not doing this, that, the other thing, and they just aren't fixing the most basic things. One thing that I'd learned from, another thing actually now that I learned from fencing, is from watching the kids in fencing, what happens is they usually suck to begin with. But the issue is, once they actually start practicing, they usually have one big flaw. And what the coaches in fencing do is they work on that one thing with them. They work on that one thing with them for months, for years even. And the moment that they figure out that one thing, now all of a sudden they become really good. They just shoot up in efficiency. They all of a sudden just become absolute monsters. I had to take a break about a year or so ago, and it's like there was this one kid who I could pretty much always beat. And then it's like now just a while later, not only is he probably the best fencer in the club, in part because, yeah, he also grew taller and stuff like that, but he also just he's pretty much flawless in certain ways. And what I see is the people who say that they're working really hard, they continue to work on something random, like, oh, let me work on my perfect pivots or whatever, when you don't understand the concept of spacing. Or, oh, let me try and introduce this new thing to my gameplay, even though you have no idea how it's supposed to be used. And people don't work hard in the smart way, nor do they work hard enough. And if you're not going to be able to do that, be honest with yourself. Don't try and tell other people that, oh, it's because they lack talent or something like that. No, everything can be learned as long as you're willing to put in the hard work. All right, so that's it for that subject. I also wanted to talk about my E3 plans. So, as many of you may know, I'm going to E3 next week, and I also got a ticket to play the For Glory matches for Smash 5 or Smash Switch, and that's going to be really fun. So, if you want to keep up with the things that I've been learning, or the things that I will be learning from my gameplay there, since I only have one session because I'm a pleb, but if you want to keep up with the things that I'll be learning there, be sure to check my Twitter at TNG_RK, because I'll just be live tweeting or tweeting right after. My current scheme is I'll go based off of the characters who are available, but most likely I'm probably just going to play Kirby, because if he's familiar enough to me, then I'll have the most likely chance of advancing. So maybe I'll do something like just play around with basic neutral options and stuff like that for the first stock, assuming 2 stocks. Hopefully I can get a quick and early lead and then experiment with other things in my second stock, just to make the most use of the time that I have. But yeah, if you want to follow that and other things that I'll be seeing at E3, I will definitely be tweeting them, so be sure to check that out. Yeah, and that's it, so thanks for watching.